Welcome to HFY Vanguard, where every battle shows why humans are the galaxy's wild card. Let the story begin. Rick Mason didn't so much run through the market as he detonated through it. The moment his shoulder slammed into a vendor's stall, a miniature avalanche of alien fruit burst across the dusty flagstones, spiky orange pods, shimmering blue spheres, and a dozen glossy purple things that rolled like grenades down the lane. The smell of them hit him all at once, syrup sweet and faintly metallic, like someone had melted candy over an old battery. Somewhere behind him, the stall owner's curses erupted in 3 different languages, 2 of which Rick understood just enough to know he'd been called both a goat thief and an anatomically improbable insult. He didn't slow down, couldn't. Not with half the Argon city guard pounding after him, boots like drumbeats on the redstone street, their plasma rifles humming as they charged up for another shot. Not with the left side of his jacket still smoldering from the one that had nearly cored him 30 seconds ago. Left a voice rasped in his ear if gravel could develop a posh accent. Rick jerked his head more out of habit than obedience. "Spark, I'm busy. Unless you prefer dying in a fruit stand like some common tourist Richard, you will turn left." Now, he turned. The narrow lane ahead squeezed between 2 towering buildings of obsidian glass, and a pen of livestock squawked in surprise as he vaulted over the low fence. The creatures looked like 6-legged chickens with scales, and they smelled like, well, not worth describing. One snapped at his boot. Rick snapped back with a kick that sent it waddling in the opposite direction. "You said this was a milk run," Rick growled between breaths. "Easy job, you said. You didn't mention the part about the angry mob with military-grade plasma rifles. The part where you seduced the Chancellor's daughter instead of stealing the data cube like a professional might have had something to do with that," Spark said, sounding simultaneously amused and disappointed. "That was diplomacy. That was hormones." Rick ducked under the side of a hover cart just as 3 plasma bolts sliced the air above him, each one leaving behind a sizzling ozone burn that made his eyes water. The street erupted in chaos. Shoppers screamed and scattered. A vendor's canopy caught fire, and somewhere a street musician kept playing because tips didn't earn themselves. 2 suns blazed in the pale orange sky overhead, their lights slamming down like a hammer on an anvil. Heat radiated from every stone baking the plaza until it felt like he was running inside an oven. His boots skidded on loose gravel as he slid to the main thoroughfare and stopped dead. The ring on his finger went hot. Not warm, not pulsing, hot. Rick had learned to trust that sensation. "More guards ahead," Spark said. "Cutting off your escape." "Destiny approaches," it added, suddenly switching to its dramatic narrator voice. "Destiny can kiss my," Rick's words died in his throat. The street ahead opened into the Grand Plaza, a wide amphitheater of stone steps and tiered balconies. And it was full. Hundreds, maybe thousands of Argon citizens packed the space, a living wall of noise and heat. Their attention was fixed on a raised platform at the plaza's center where a thick metal post jutted from the stone. Rick smelled them before he really saw them, sweat spices, cheap alcohol, and underneath it all, a tang he knew too well. Blood sport. But it wasn't the crowd or the post that made his brain hitch and spin sideways. It was the woman chained there. She stood straight despite the shackles, her chin tilted upward in defiance. Her skin was a deep violet that shimmered in the dual sunlight the way amethyst might if it could breathe. Her hair not quite pink, more like rose gold, with streaks dulled by dust and blood, fell past her shoulders in tangled waves. Even across 50 yards of heat and noise, she was impossible to miss. Even bloodied, she wasn't pretty in the fragile, breakable way. She was beautiful like a storm, like a drawn blade catching the sun. What was left of her clothing was silk, or had been in tatters that clung stubbornly to curves that looked like they belonged on a goddess carved by a very distracted sculptor. Purple blood seeped from gashes in her legs, trailing down into the dusty stone. Ancient Blood Spark whispered, almost reverent, "Can you feel it, Richard, the resonance?" Rick didn't feel anything except a sudden, irrational urge to murder every single person between him and that post. A voice boomed over the crowd, amplified by unseen speakers. On a floating dais above them stood a man draped in black and blue robes, his every movement rippling with embedded energy crystals. His silver eyes swept the crowd with the self-satisfaction of someone who had never once been wrong in his own mind. Citizens of Argan Lord Myrax declared today, we cleanse our world of the last tainted bloodline. Today we end the threat of the old dynasty forever. The crowd roared. Something small and hard flew from the stands, a fruit maybe, and splattered against the chained woman's shoulder. She didn't flinch. Eloa of the fallen house, Myrax intoned, you stand condemned for the crime of existing, for carrying the cursed genes that nearly destroyed our world. How do you plead? Rick expected silence. Instead, Eloa smiled. It wasn't kind. I plead, she said, her voice carrying without any amplification, that you're a coward who hides behind laws written by dead men, and that you're so terrified of what I represent you'd rather feed me to beasts than face me yourself. The reaction from the crowd was immediate, a roar of mixed outrage and excitement. Brave words for dead royalty, Myrax said lazily, then gestured. Release the Rexes. On either side of the platform, gates groaned open. Rick's stomach dropped. He'd seen vids of Rex's apex predators the size of small trucks, bred for muscle teeth in an endless hunger. Seeing them in person was different. The platform shuddered with each step they took, the air vibrating under the weight of their approach. The crowd leaned forward in unison. Money began to change hands, bets on how long she'd last. A minute, 2. Richard Sparks said sharply, this is not our concern. The guards are still. The first Rex lunged. Time slowed. Rick watched Eloa twist against her chains, saw the massive jaws descending, saw the inevitability in the angle of attack. The teeth closed on flesh. Eloa's scream cut through the plaza like a blade. Purple blood sprayed the stone, and Rick's vision went, not red but silver. The ring blazed on his hand, and he moved. Rick's body acted before the rest of him could object. One moment he was shoving through the press of bodies, scattering betting slips and drinks. The next his boots slammed against the stone lip of the platform. The ring's power surged through his veins like liquid lightning, propelling him in a 20-foot arc over the heads of the nearest guards. He landed between Eloa and the second Rex, crouched low enough that the stone cracked under his weight. The sound froze the crowd. Even the Rex paused mid-stalk, massive head tilting, as if confused by this new prey that had just inserted itself between it and its meal. Rick rose slowly, the violet-skinned woman chained behind him. His right hand shimmered as the ring liquefied and crawled over his fingers, hardening into a gleaming gauntlet. Energy crackled in the air, distorting the light between each of his knuckles. Hi there, he said conversationally to the Rex. Nice day for an execution, isn't it? Good weather, enthusiastic crowd. His gaze flicked upward to the floating dais. And great speech, by the way, really nailed that whole cartoon villain vibe. Myrax's silver eyes narrowed. Who dare? Rick Mason, human, professional pain in the ass. His tone darkened. And here's the thing about humans, Myrax, we have this stupid habit of getting involved when we see something that pisses us off. He gestured broadly at the chained woman, the crowd, the blood still dripping onto the stone. This pisses me off. The first Rex, the one with Eloa's blood still on its jaws, growled behind him. The sound vibrated in Rick's bones. He didn't turn. Touch her again, he said loud enough for the plaza to hear, and I'll burn this planet down. Someone in the crowd laughed nervously. The laugh died when Rick's gauntlet flared a surge of silver light, making the air shimmer. He's bluffing, a voice shouted. Am I? Rick finally turned, locking eyes with Eloa for the first time up close. Her silver violet gaze was sharper than the daggers strapped to her hips, if she still had them. They held shock, pain, and something else. Not hope exactly, more like surprise that anyone had bothered. I didn't ask for your help, Earthling, she said through clenched teeth, her voice still rich and unbroken despite the blood soaking her thigh. Good, because I'm not doing this for you. The lie came easily, too easily, after years of pretending he didn't care. She arched an eyebrow, and even in pain, the corner of her mouth twitched like she'd caught him out. He's lying, Spark announced cheerfully, its voice now echoing through the plaza thanks to the acoustics. Heart rate elevated, pupil dilation increased, micro-expression activity, significant attraction detected. Shut up, Rick hissed. The second Rex chose that moment to charge. Rick pivoted to meet it, the ring flooding him with enhanced reflexes and tactical overlays. Time slowed to a crawl. The predator's movements broke down into a sequence of muscle contractions and weight shifts, each one tagged with projected trajectories in his vision. At the last second, Rick sidestepped and brought the full weight of his gauntleted fist down on the Rex's skull. The impact rang out like a bell struck with a sledgehammer. Stone cracked beneath its knees as it collapsed dazed. "Stay down," Rick advised, then drove his boot into its jaw. Enhanced strength sent 2 tons of predator tumbling off the platform into the screaming crowd. The first Rex, still blood-hungry, circled closer. Its movements were slower now, warier. Richard Spark murmured in his ear, "Incoming hostile, 7 o'clock." Rick spun just as a plasma bolt tore past his head. A guard on the platform leveled his weapon for another shot, only to have it caught on Rick's gauntlet and dispersed into harmless sparks. Rick responded with a burst of concentrated energy that lifted the man off his feet and into his companions. More guards clambered onto the platform. 12, no 15 plus the Rex, plus whatever else Mirax had up his silk-draped sleeve. "Little busy here," Rick called over his shoulder. "Any chance you could—" The world went white. For a heartbeat, he thought someone had tossed a flash grenade. Then he realized the light was coming from behind him, from Aloha. The Rex reeled back, blinded, thrashing its head. "I have my moments," she said, voice trembling with pain but tinged with satisfaction. Rick grinned. "Spark, give me crowd control, pattern 7. That's the one where you almost died on Kepler Station. That's the one where I almost died but didn't." He dove into the guard, sliding under a plasma burst, sweeping one man's legs out from under him, grabbing his weapon mid-fall and using it to drop 3 others at range. The ring projected an energy shield over his left side, intercepting incoming fire. The blinded Rex stumbled toward the sound of combat. Rick grabbed an unlucky guard and shoved him into its path. The Rex's jaws closed on armor and flesh with a wet crunch. "Brutal," Spark commented. "Effective." Rick ducked another shot and cracked the shooter across the jaw. "You want to file a complaint with HR?" The fight became a blur. Enhanced strikes sending men sprawling, gauntlet blows, bending weapons guards toppling into each other. But for every one he dropped, 2 more seemed to appear. The Rex was recovering its sight, and Aloha sagged against the post, her light show having cost her more than she could spare. Rick blasted 2 more guards and sprinted back to her. How bad? Had worse, she lied, though the blood pooling under her told a different story. Rick examined the chains. "Spark, can you?" "Energy locked. I'd need 30 uninterrupted seconds to break them." "Might as well ask for a vacation while you're at it." Eloa's hand found his arm cool against his skin. "Go, you've done enough, more than anyone else would have." "Yeah, well," Rick said, turning to face the encroaching guards, "I'm not anyone else." The guards formed a semicircle, weapons trained. The Rex shook its head, ready to pounce. Above them, Mirax descended slowly, robes billowing in a way that screamed drama. "Impressive," he said. "Tell me, human, are all Earthlings so eager for suicide, or are you special?" "Little of column A, little of column B," Rick replied. "What's it gonna be, Mirax? You want to dance, or you gonna hide behind your goons all day?" Mirax's smile was pure predator. "Neither. By interfering in a lawful execution, you've invoked one of our oldest laws. You have claimed her." Rick frowned. "Claimed as your bride." The Dictator's grin widened. "Congratulations, human. You are now bound by sacred law to the last daughter of the fallen dynasty. But," he lifted a finger theatrically, "the law is clear. To claim one sister is to claim them all." A ripple went through the crowd. "3 more of her bloodline hide in this city," Mirax said. "By defending her, you've claimed responsibility for all of them." Rick's gaze slid back to Aloha. Her lips formed the word "don't." He turned back to Mirax, executed a mocking bow. "Always wanted a big family." The plaza erupted in gasps and shouts. Mirax's eyes glittered. "Then by ancient law I pronounce you bound. Release the bride. Bring forth her sisters. Let all witness the human has claimed the cursed blood." The chains flickered and fell. Aloha collapsed forward. Rick caught her before she hit the ground. "You absolute idiot," she murmured. "You have no idea what you've just done." "Thursday, for me, princess." He scooped her into his arms. "Spark medical. Severe femoral laceration. She'll bleed out in 6 minutes." Rick tightened his hold. "You hear that? No dying on me. We just got engaged." Eloa managed a weak laugh. "Your bedside manner is terrible." "Yeah, well, you should see my cooking." With the crowd parting before him, Rick ran. The Rex roared behind, but for the moment, no one stopped him. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The heat from the twin suns seemed to follow him through the winding alleys, baking every step clinging to his skin like a second unwanted shirt. Iloa's weight was surprisingly light in his arms, but every stumble she made against him sent a warm slickness through his jacket, purple blood soaking deep. Spark kept up a running commentary in his ear about pulse rate, blood pressure, and statistically unfavorable survival odds, which Rick ignored in favor of putting one boot in front of the other. They ducked under the sagging awning of an abandoned shop. Rick pressed his back to the wall, listening for the pursuit. The crowd noise from the plaza was still a dull roar, but the guards hadn't yet swarmed the side streets. Either Mirax had ordered them to hold, or he wanted them to think they'd escaped. You realize, Spark said, voice deceptively calm, that what you did in the arena is legally binding here. The claiming law dates back to— I don't care if it dates back to the Big Bang, Rick snapped. I wasn't about to watch her get eaten for sport. Iloa stirred against him, her breath warm against his collarbone. You should care, Earthman. That law. It's not just a joke for the crowd. You claimed me. That means you claimed my sisters too. Yeah, Mirax mentioned, Rick said, adjusting his grip so she was cradled more comfortably. 3 more, right? Her gaze sharpened despite the blood loss. 3 more women whose deaths you just made your problem. Rick allowed himself a crooked grin. Big family dinners. Got it. She groaned, whether from pain or exasperation he couldn't tell. The safe house wasn't much to look at, a narrow door wedged between 2 crumbling tenements. Rick kicked it twice in a coded rhythm. It swung open to reveal a tall, violet-skinned woman with sharp, calculating eyes and hair the color of dark wine braided tight against her head. A knife glinted in her hand. Inside, quickly. Rick stepped in. The air inside was cooler, tinged with the scent of medicinal herbs and something metallic. The woman, Liana, Iloa's eldest sister, as he would soon learn, gestured toward a battered metal table that had seen far better decades. Put her here, and don't get blood on the floor if you can help it. Rick set Iloa down gently. Liana was already cutting away what was left of her sister's tattered garments, her movements precise and unflinching. You're one of the sisters, Rick asked. Liana, she confirmed without looking up. The smart one, which must make you the idiot who just married us all. Rick smirked. Charming family already. Before he could say more, a second woman appeared, younger, with luminous violet skin that seemed almost to glow in the dim light. Her rose gold hair was woven into elaborate braids, and she clutched a sleek medical device like it was a lifeline. Her wide eyes flicked from the blood on Rick's arms to Iloa's pale face. Viriliana said sharply, "Accelerator now." The youngest sister darted forward, hands trembling as she activated the device. Rick opened his mouth to ask where the third was when a shadow moved along the wall. The air shifted heavy with the kind of presence that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Kayla stepped into the light, all coiled muscle and scarred forearms, a wickedly curved blade resting against her shoulder. Her eyes were pure predator. So she said, slowly circling him like a wolf scenting an intruder, "You're the human who thinks he can protect us." "No thinking about it, sweetheart," Rick said evenly. "Already did." The blade flashed faster than most people could blink. Rick's hand snapped up the ring, manifesting just enough armor to catch the strike. The impact sang along his bones. Kayla's eyebrows rose. Not fear, surprise, maybe even respect, but it didn't stop her second swing. Rick Duck stepped in and twisted her wrist just enough to make her drop the blade. It clanged against the floor. "My patience," he said, "is running thin." "Enough!" Liana's voice cut through the tension like a whip crack. "Kayla, if you kill our new husband, we all die. That's how the binding works." "Rick, it is. Rick, isn't it? Please let go of my sister's wrist. I'm busy saving the other one." Rick released her. Kayla stepped on back, eyes narrowed, but no longer testing him for now. "How is she?" he asked, moving closer to Iloa's side. "Alive. Barely." Liana sealed the damaged artery with surgical precision. "She's lost too much blood." Vera handed over another instrument. Rick noticed her hands were still shaking. "First time seeing combat wounds?" he asked softly. She nodded, not trusting her voice. "She'll be fine," he said. "Your sister knows what she's doing." Liana's jaw tightened. "Our mother insisted we all learn combat medicine. Said princesses who couldn't stitch wounds wouldn't survive to rule." She was half right. Before Rick could respond, Spark chimed in tone too cheerful for the circumstances. We have 17 hostiles converging on this location. ETA 3 minutes. Liana didn't look up. They'll have trackers. They always do after an arena claiming. Kayla snatched up her blade again. Human you coming? Or are Earthmen only good for dramatic entrances? Rick glanced at Aloha, who was stable but pale. Can you move? Not for at least an hour, Liana said. The tissue regenerator needs time. Then we hold here. Rick headed for the narrow stairs. Let's make them regret coming. The moment had the same strange stillness as the breath before a storm. Somewhere outside, boots struck stone. The city's hum shifted, voices dimming as people instinctively cleared the streets. Rick checked his gauntlet. The ring was warm against his skin, humming like a living thing. This is going to be fun, he muttered. Sparks snorted in his head. Your definition of fun is dangerously miscalibrated. The first explosion wasn't subtle. A thunderclap of heat and pressure tore through the north wall, sending dust and fragments of old brick into the cramped upper room. Rick didn't wait for a second blast. He vaulted over a broken table, landing near the smoking breach just as the first enforcer stepped through. The man was big, armored head to toe in Argon enforcement matte black and wielding a plasma rifle with the kind of casual precision that said he'd done this 100 times before. Rick's gauntlet met him at jaw level. The impact cracked helmet plating and dropped him like a marionette with its strings cut. Number 1, Rick said under his breath. Number 2 tried to swing his rifle into line. Rick grabbed the barrel, crushed it like an empty soda can, and used it as a club to clothesline the man into the floorboards. Number 3 took one look at the scene and started backing up until Rick's borrowed throwing knife buried itself in his shoulder plating. The man crumpled with a groan. Efficient, Spark commented dryly, though your throw was 1 degree off optimal. Everyone's a critic, Rick muttered, ducking as a hail of plasma lit the air above him. The rest of the squad outside had regrouped, firing in suppressive bursts. Sparks from impact lit the shadows as they pressed forward. Rick could hear more boots hammering the alley, not just the north breach now, but both sides. Kayla, he called. Company coming your way. No answer. He risked a glance through the dim back hall. That's when he saw why. 5 enforcers had forced their way in through the rear entrance, and Kayla was already in the middle of them. She moved like liquid steel, her curved blade singing arcs of death in the close quarters. One man went down clutching a ruined hamstring, another staggered back with a broken nose, but more kept pouring through the door. Unsustainable, Spark observed. You think Rick ducked back from another plasma burst, checked the charge on his stolen rifle, and stepped into the hall to lay down covering fire for Kayla. That's when the world erupted in light. It came from below, pouring through the cracks in the floorboards like molten silver. Not plasma, not fire, something older. Raw. What the hell, Rick started. Vera Kayla gasped between parries. When she's frightened enough, the light pulsed outward and every piece of tech in the building died. Weapons went dark, targeting visors blinked out. Spark's voice cut off mid-word. The enforcers stumbled blind and disoriented in the sudden darkness. Kayla didn't miss a beat. Without their shields or tracking, they were meat in her kill zone. Her blade flashed, finding throats, tendons, gaps in armor. Rick adapted just as quickly, old-fashioned street fighting taking over. A head slammed into a wall here, a boot swept a leg there. By the time the light faded, the floor was littered with groaning, broken enforcers. Emergency lanterns flickered to life, casting long, jagged shadows across the room. Rick's gaze snapped toward the stairs, and he bolted down. Vera was curled in the far corner of the medical room, tears streaking her cheeks, faint threads of residual light still dancing under her skin. I couldn't control it, she whispered. When I heard the fighting, You saved us! Rick cut in, crouching a safe distance from her. That EMP took out their gear and gave us the edge. Liana's head whipped up from Aloha's side. That wasn't electromagnetic. Rick frowned. Then what was it? Pure stellar energy, Liana said grimly. She channels raw starlight when threatened. Of course she does, Rick muttered. Why wouldn't she? Spark's absence was a weight on his hand now, the ring still there, warm but silent. You break my toy, he asked Vera with a half smile. I knocked it offline, she admitted. Don't worry, Rick said. He sulks for a while, but he always comes back. Liana's eyes narrowed. We need to move. That much power will have been noticed and more will come. Agreed, Kayla said, stepping in with fresh blood streaking her armor, none of it hers by the way she moved. We're not staying for round two. Liana began packing what she could. There's another safe house in the factory district, more defensible. Rick glanced at Aloha. She was still unconscious, but her breathing was steady. Can she be moved, he asked. She needs rest, Liana said, but she also needs to be alive, and here is no longer safe. Then let's go. The escape through Argon's underbelly was a study in shadows and silence. Kayla led, knowing every maintenance tunnel and service hatch. Liana stayed near the rear eyes, always scanning for a tail. Rick carried Aloha, adjusting his grip to keep pressure on the wound without jostling her too much. Every breath she took pressed her lightly against his chest. Every stumble of his boots brought her closer. Stop thinking so loud, she murmured, once eyes half-lidded. Wasn't thinking anything, he lied. Liar. Your whole body tenses every time I touch you. Afraid you'll bleed on my last clean shirt. This is your clean shirt. From behind them, Vera giggled. Just a small, incongruous sound in the middle of their insane flight, but it made Rick's mouth twitch despite himself. Focus, Liana hissed as they paused at a junction. Up ahead, torchlight wavered, 6 guards heavily armed, sweeping the street with a bioscanner. Rick saw the sweep pattern instantly. In seconds, it would hit their hiding spot. I can, Vera began. No, Liana snapped, gripping her sister's hand. Not unless we have no choice. You're not trained for control, and another pulse that strong might. The scanner beeped. One of the guards turned toward their shadowed alcove. Kayla moved before Rick could. She flowed out of the dark like a blade given life, taking the scanner first, the guard's throat second. The rest shouted and fired wildly into the dark. Go, Kayla barked. Rick didn't argue. He scooped Aloha fully into his arms and ran Liana, dragging Vera close behind. Plasma fire lit the alleys behind them as Kayla's silhouette danced between bolts, buying them precious seconds. They didn't stop until the sprawl of the factory district rose around them, steel skeletons against a dawn-streaked scum. The safe house here was different, older walls faintly thrumming with some subtle power. What is this place? Rick asked as he set Aloha down. Neutral ground, Liana said. Old treaty site from before the fall. Even Merax won't violate it without cause. Rick slumped against the wall, adrenaline fading into exhaustion. Aloha was still pale, but her breathing was strong. Thank you, she said quietly after a moment. For earlier. For all of it. Don't thank me yet, Rick replied. We're not out of this. No, she agreed, but we're alive. And after today, that's more than I expected. Rick opened his mouth to reply, but a familiar voice finally chimed in on his finger. Absolute electromagnetic nightmares, Spark groused. Do you have any idea what that did to my neural pathways? I haven't felt pain like that since, I see we've progressed to cuddling. We're already married, remember, Rick said. This is the honeymoon, Aloha murmured. Worst honeymoon ever. But the company's not bad. From across the room, Liana called, get a room. Oh, wait, you can literally claim any room you want now. Kayla's voice followed from the doorway. Enjoy it while you can. We'll need every edge when Merax realizes we're not running anymore. The factory safe house should have felt secure. Steel-reinforced walls, a roof stitched together from interlocking plates of alien alloy, and the faint hum of whatever ancient treaty magic kept Merax from crossing the threshold without cause. It was better than the rat holes they'd been ducking into all day. But Rick had been in enough war zones to know safety was a temporary illusion. You could paint it, patch it, and light a candle inside, but sooner or later, something always blew the door off its hinges. And right now, something was rattling the hinges of reality itself. It started as a low vibration underfoot, subtle enough that he thought it was just his pulse pounding from exhaustion. Then the walls began to thrum harder in an uneven rhythm like a drum line trying to keep step with a song they didn't quite know. The air thickened, carrying a metallic tang that prickled his tongue. Liana noticed first. She froze mid-step, her sharp eyes narrowing. Do you feel that? Before Rick could answer, Aloha stirred where she rested against him. Her eyes cracked open, and the color in them was wrong, too bright, too silver, like moonlight reflecting off a blade. It's starting, she whispered. Vera, who'd been curled in a corner, fiddling nervously with a salvaged medkit, looked up. What's starting? Aloha pushed herself upright despite Rick's protest, bracing one hand against his arm. What my mother feared. The Devourer. Kayla, sharpening her blade in the doorway, snorted. Devourers are a campfire story. Old war propaganda to scare children into obedience. No, Aloha said flatly. They're real. And Vera's light woke one. The youngest sister's face went pale, or as pale as Violet's skin could go. I didn't mean to. No one's blaming you. Aloha interrupted, her tone softer now. It's in our blood. Mother tried to hide it, to suppress it, but fear brings it out. Rick's hand tightened on his gauntlet. Okay, back up. Spark, what the hell's a devour? The ring pulsed, its voice unusually measured. Cosmic entities, older than most galaxies. They exist to unmake, to reduce all things to entropy. Your princess's grandmother was my first bearer. She bound one once, at great cost. Rick felt the weight in Spark's words. What cost? Everything, Spark said, simply, and I couldn't save her. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Liana broke it with the cold efficiency of a tactician. Then we leave. Off-world. Now. Before this thing finds us. No, Aloha's voice carried the weight of command, now the kind that made even Kayla glance over. We've run for 3 years. If the Devourer is coming because of us, then we stop it. Kayla barked a humorless laugh. You don't stop planet killers, Eli. You hide. You hope they move on. The old empire didn't have him, Aloha said, nodding toward Rick. Rick raised an eyebrow. Pretty sure I'm flattered, but I think you're overselling me. I punch things. Sometimes they stay down. You've got the ring, she countered. And the ring remembers how to fight them. Correction, Spark said, I remember how to lose to them more slowly. Rick looked around the room. Liana's calculating gaze. Kayla's restless grip on her blade. Vera's wide, frightened eyes. All right, we're not running, but if we're going to hit back, we need to do it on our terms. Liana crossed her arms. Mirax isn't going to let us walk into his palace and ask for a war council. Good, Rick said. Then we make him come to us. Kayla tilted her head. Why would he? Rick held up his ring hand. Because he's been after this for years. Now it's bonded to your bloodline. He'll come running. That's insane, Liana said. That's Tuesday, Rick replied. The first sign. The discussion was cut short by a distant sound, not an explosion, not thunder, but a tearing like cloth being ripped apart on a scale too large to imagine. Rick moved to the nearest window slit. Beyond the skeletal factory rooftops, the air itself writhed, bending light in ways that made his eyes ache. A section of the city simply didn't look right. It pulsed in and out of alignment with the rest of reality, like a bad hollow feed struggling to buffer. Vera drifted up beside him, hugging herself. That's where I lit up. That's where it'll come through, Aloha said. Rick scanned the streets. People were fleeing in all directions, their faces twisted with panic. Enforcement troops were corralling some, abandoning others, and far above Mirax's floating palace drifted closer to the anomaly. He turned back to the sisters. All right, we don't have time for a full plan. Liana, you and Vera get whatever ritual gear you need to lock this thing back up. Kayla, you're with me. We're the wall between them and whatever comes through. And me, Aloha asked. You're on anchor duty, Rick said. Spark says the bond between you and the ring might be our only shot at keeping the thing contained. Her lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. I thought you said you weren't doing this for me. Still not, he said, but I am doing it with you. The weight of the sky. They moved fast. Liana and Vera gathered strange crystal formations and ceremonial implements from hidden caches in the walls. Kayla strapped extra knives along her forearms, her movements precise and almost meditative. Rick checked the charge on his stolen plasma rifles, then let spark flow into a full gauntlet, and Bracer set the silver metal gleaming in the safe house's dim light. By the time they stepped outside, the light over the city had changed. The twin suns were still there, but their warmth felt leached away, replaced by the cold weight of something vast pressing down from above. Every step toward the anomaly made the hair on Rick's arms rise. The ground felt less like stone and more like the stretched skin of a drum vibrating faintly underfoot. He didn't need Spark to tell him the Devourer was close. People in the streets froze as they passed, their eyes wide, breaths shallow. Some recognized Aloha and fell to their knees. Others saw Rick and recoiled, whispering Earthmen like it was a curse or a blessing, he couldn't tell which. They reached a half-collapsed plaza 3 blocks from the anomaly. Liana planted the crystals in a wide ring, Vera kneeling in the center, hands trembling as she prepared to channel. Aloha took her place opposite Rick, the distance between them thrumming with the faint silver thread of their shared bond. Rick flexed his fingers, feeling Spark's hum deepen. All right, he said. Let's see if we can keep this thing from turning your planet into a snack. The air around the plaza vibrated with a tension that had nothing to do with sound. Vera knelt at the ritual's heart, her hands hovering inches above the largest crystal in the formation. Threads of light, not quite silver, not quite gold, seeped from her palms in to the facets, scattering in a web of shimmering lines to the other stones Liana had placed. The air inside the circle felt heavier, charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Rick stood at the perimeter, scanning the streets. Kayla paced opposite him, blade drawn, her every step measured and predatory. Eloa's position anchored the far side of the circle, her violet skin luminous under the building glow. Liana moved between them all, checking crystal alignment with the precision of a bomb disposal expert. "How long do we need?" Rick asked, without looking away from the shadowed alleys. 20 minutes, Liana said. 30 if... Don't say 30! Rick cut her off. Kayla's head snapped toward the rooftops. Movement. Rick followed her gaze. Black armored shapes rippled into view, rappelling down on grav lines from rooftops like a coordinated swarm. At their center, descending through the air, as if gravity were a mild suggestion, floated Lord Marax. His crystalline robes blazed with inner light, each embedded shard pulsing with stolen energy. The Dictator's silver eyes locked first on Vera, then on Eloa. His smile was the same infuriating curve Rick remembered from the arena. "Did you think I'd let you complete a binding ritual?" he called out, his voice carrying easily over the plaza. Rick raised his rifle, though he doubted it would last more than a heartbeat against Marax. "We're trying to save your city, Chrome Dome. You might want to consider helping instead of monologuing." Marax's laugh was low and sharp. "My city was lost the moment the child woke the devourer. The only question now is whether we die as martyrs or as monsters." "That's a false choice," Liana said, never pausing in her work. "Spoken like your mother," Marax replied, and for the first time his voice wavered just slightly. "She thought she was clever too. Right up until I..." Kayla moved like a thrown knife. Her blade sang through the air where his throat had been, but Mirax drifted back, catching her next strike with a crackling shield of raw energy. "Touchy subject," Rick noted, sighting down his rifle. He squeezed the trigger. A bolt of plasma lanced toward Mirax and dissolved into harmless sparks a meter from his chest. With a flick of his wrist, Mirax crushed the rifle into a tangle of molten slag that fell from Rick's hands. Above them, the sky tore open. It didn't look like an explosion. It looked like reality itself was being peeled back, layer by layer. Beyond the rip in the sky, nothing made sense, shapes and colors that hurt to look at, like geometry having a nightmare. The Devourer's presence washed over them like a tide. Not heat, not cold, just absence. The sense that everything it touched was already gone, only too stubborn to realize it yet. Vera gasped, her control fracturing. Light flared from her in uncontrolled pulses, each one making the tear in the sky widen. "Yes," Marax breathed. "Feed it, child. Show them the truth of your bloodline." Rick was moving before he thought, tackling Marax in a full-body slam that drove them both through the weakened floor of a nearby building. They crashed into the lower level in a rain of shattered beams and dust, trading blows that could dent steel. Mirax fought like a man with centuries of experience, controlled economical strikes. Rick fought like someone with no sense of self-preservation. "You think you're saving them?" Mirax caught Rick's gauntleted fist, energy crackling between them. "I've spent lifetimes keeping that thing dormant. You've undone it in a day." "Good." Rick headbutted him, helmet ringing against crystal. "Your system sucked anyway." Above them, Vera's scream split the air, not human, not alien, something that carried on frequencies Rick felt in his bones. The ritual circle overhead collapsed light, scattering into chaotic fragments. The Devourer's attention focused on them like a magnifying glass over ants. "Now you've done it," Spark said grimly in Rick's ear. "Full manifestation in progress. Estimated time until total consumption, 12 minutes. Then we've got 11 to figure something out." Rick rolled as a blast from Mirax scorched the floor where he'd been. A desperate bargain. Eloa's voice cut through the chaos above, clear and commanding. "Mirax, you want to die a martyr? Here's your chance. Help us or we all burn together." Mirax's laugh echoed up through the hole. "Help you after everything." The Devourer struck. Not physically, it didn't need to. Its focus tightened and the building simply ceased to exist from the third floor up. Gravity went insane. Rick grabbed a twisted beam, catching Vera as she tumbled past, her eyes wide with panic. "I can't stop it," she cried. "The light just keeps coming." "Then don't stop it," Rick said. "Spark, can you channel her power through me?" "That would likely kill you," Spark replied flatly. "Not asking for a prognosis," Rick growled. "Can you do it?" A pause. "Theoretically, but her energy signature is incompatible with your neural pattern." "Make it compatible." Rick looked up at Aloha, who was pulling Liana and Kale to safety with ribbons of solid light. "You said it yourself, sometimes there's more than one worthy bearer." Understanding flared in Spark's tone. "You want me to split my essence, bond with both of you, unless you've got a better idea." "I have only done this once," Spark said slowly, "with her grandmother and her consort. They died saving this world." "Then let's try not to repeat that part." The split bond. Rick set Vera down inside the remnants of the crystal ring. "Mirax, you want to live? Then stop trying to kill me and start holding this thing back." The Dictator hesitated, then stepped forward, the light from his crystal robes dimming as he poured power into the failing formation. "Tell her," he said to Liana without looking away from the Devourer's tear in the sky. "Tell her I remembered my oath." Rick held out his hand to Aloha. "Ready for the worst honeymoon activity ever." "I thought that was meeting my sisters," she shot back, but she took his hand. Spark burned like molten silver on their skin. The world narrowed to the shared link between them, her fear, her fury, her fierce determination, all braided into his stubborn defiance and half-buried loneliness. "Well," she said, through the link, "this is intimate." Later, Rick said, "Right now, we need to." The Devourer's focus slammed into them, dragging their joined wills toward the wound in the sky. "Challenge it," Mirax finished grimly. Reality folded. One moment Rick was standing ankle-deep in broken stone, Aloha's hand locked in his, the Devourer's pressure making his teeth ache. The next, there was no ground, no sky, only an infinite nowhere, the color of old bruises and dying stars. He could still feel her through the bond, the steady rhythm of her breath, the coil of steel in her thoughts, the raw pulse of her bloodline's power mixing with the ring's essence now split between them. But around them, there was nothing to see except fragments, ghostly shards of places and people that had already been consumed. "This is new," Rick said, voice echoing in a way that wasn't sound. "Stay close." Eloa's grip tightened. Wasn't planning to wander. The Devourer manifested in front of them, not a beast, not even a shape, but a presence, a gravity of hunger. It radiated inevitability. "You offer yourselves as sacrifice." The voice came not through ears, but directly into their minds. It was ancient, patient, and absolutely certain of their failure. "We offer ourselves as opponents," Aloha said, her voice steady despite the pressure crushing in around them. "Face us and fall or flee, and prove your weakness. If nothingness could laugh, it did. I do not flee. All things come to me in time." "Yeah," Rick said, "humans are terrible at waiting. Let's skip to the end." They struck together, not with fists, but with will. Rick poured in every ounce of stubborn resistance he'd ever lived by the lives he'd saved, the fights he'd refused to walk away from, the little acts of defiance in the face of impossible odds. Eloa matched him, her heritage blazing, generations of queens who'd chosen hope over fear even when the cost was everything. The Devourer reeled, not in pain but in surprise. "Impossible. You are finite. I am eternal." "Wrong," said a new voice, Vera's bright and clear through the link. Back in reality, her sisters had joined hands around her, channeling their wills into the connection. "You're old. We're new. You're alone. We're together." Also predictable, Liana's mind voice added like a knife point. "Entropy always is. Life adapts." "Life fights," Kayla snarled. "Life loves," Aloha whispered. The Devourer pressed closer. "Love dies. Hope fails. All things end." Maybe Rick said, but not today. And then he did something incredibly stupid. The poison of hope. Rick let go of Aloha's hand and stepped directly into the Devourer's core. Her scream followed him into the dark, and then there was no sound at all. No light, no self, just the crushing certainty of ending. His memories began to fragment, scattering into the void. His first mission, the smell of engine grease in a Terran hangar, the warmth of a cup of bitter coffee before a job. But he'd come prepared. "Spark," he whispered into the nothing. The ring detonated not with fire, but with everything that made him human. Every bad joke he'd ever cracked to calm a panicked squad mate. Every laugh he'd stolen from someone who thought they were out of laughs. Every stubborn refusal to bow to something bigger than him. Hope, messy, inconvenient, irrational, flooded the Devourer's essence. The presence convulsed. What have you done? Given you indigestion, Rick said, reforming in the heart of its consciousness. Eloa's light blazed into existence beside him. She'd followed, of course. You absolute idiot, she said. You're absolute idiot, he shot back, catching her as she staggered, legally binding and everything. She kissed him. In the heart of cosmic horror, surrounded by nothingness and dissolution, she kissed him like the universe depended on it. Maybe it did. When they broke apart, the Devourer was different. Still vast, still hungry, but no longer certain. A new choice. Now Eloa breathed. While it's vulnerable, they struck again, but not to destroy. Destruction was its nature, not theirs. Instead, they offered it something else, a choice. You don't have to be only hunger, she said, her voice carrying the authority of her bloodline across impossible spaces. You can be patience, a guardian. The pause between heartbeats instead of the final breath. Work with us, Rick added, or spend eternity choking on hope. Your call. The Devourer wavered. I am hunger. And you can be more, Eloa insisted. The anchor. In the real world, Mirax stood at the circle's edge, his silver eyes wide as he felt the entity's nature shifting. They're doing it, he murmured. They're actually. They need more, Lyanna said through clenched teeth. The binding won't hold unless someone anchors it. Mirax closed his eyes and saw the path clearly, something he'd avoided for decades. He stepped into the circle and placed his hands on Vera's shoulders. The youngest sister gasped as his crystal-lined robes flared blindingly bright. What are you? What I should have done years ago, Mirax said, his voice calm now. He poured centuries of stolen energy into the circle. Tell her, I remembered my oath. The binding. Inside the Devourer's core, Rick and Eloa felt the shift. External power flooded in, not hostile, but offering structure. The entity's form solidified its hunger, drawn into a shape that could be contained. This isn't death, Eloa said softly. No, Rick agreed. It's growth. Really awkward, painful growth. Like puberty, but for cosmic horrors. She laughed even here. Do you ever stop joking? Not if I can help it. The Devourer made its choice. Reality snapped back like a taut wire. Rick and Eloa tumbled onto cracked stone, their shared light dimming to merely bright. Above them, the wound in the sky sealed, leaving only a faint scar where it had been. The Devourer was gone, not destroyed, but distant, watching, waiting, purposeful. The last light of Mirax Vera's cry pulled them upright. The Dictator knelt at the circle's center, his once blazing robes cracked and dim. The energy he'd poured out had hollowed him. You saved us, Eloa said, kneeling beside him. Saved myself, he murmured. His gaze softened. Your mother would be proud. I'll tell her, Eloa promised. Mirax smiled, a real one this time. Too dramatic for my own good. His form dissolved into motes of light that drifted upward like inverse snow. The plaza fell silent, the only sound the distant calls of a city rediscovering breath. Somewhere someone began to cheer, and others joined until the sound swelled into a wave. They'd seen it all, the fight, the sacrifice, the impossible victory. Kayla broke the moment. So who's running this place now? Not me, Rick said immediately. I don't do politics. Lyanna looked at Eloa. The eldest has the strongest claim. The city's yours, if you want it. Eloa rose slowly, still leaning on Rick. We rule together, 4 sisters and 1 very stubborn human husband. The plaza was a battlefield frozen in the first breath after victory. Smoke curled from the scorched walls. Crystals from the shattered ritual stones glittered like fallen stars in the dust. People emerged slowly from hiding shopkeepers, street urchins, even the hard-eyed enforcers who'd served Mirax. They looked at Eloa first, then at Rick. And somehow the cheers grew louder. Rick felt the attention like a weight he'd never asked for. He'd been a soldier, a merc, a wanderer. Never the guy on the balcony waving to the crowd. He half-turned to Eloa, ready to step back into the shadows, but she caught his wrist. They'll need you, she said quietly. They've got you, he countered. Her eyes softened. We both know they'll trust me faster if they know you're here too. Rick sighed. You know I'm bad at politics. I'm not asking you to do politics, she said, lips quirking. I'm asking you to be you. Kayla sauntered up, wiping her blade on a rag. She's right, and if you run off now, I'll have to come drag you back. I hate dragging people. Lyanna joined them and already issuing orders to the milling guards. The city's in chaos. We'll need a provisional council until the Bloodline claim is formalized. I'm guessing I don't get a vote on that council, Rick said. You married into it, Lyanna replied without missing a beat. Congratulations. Vera approached last, her normally shy gaze steady now. I didn't thank you, she said, for not letting me drown in it. Rick smiled. Don't thank me yet. I'm not planning to stop dragging you out of trouble. A city reborn. Over the next 2 days, the sisters worked like they'd been born for it because they had. Lyanna turned Myrax's old administrative chamber into a war room for reconstruction. Kayla took command of the palace guard, retraining them into something more like protectors than enforcers. Vera poured her light into repairing the damage, healing both people and structures with the same gentle precision. Eloa stood on balconies and in marketplaces, speaking to the people, not like a ruler above them, but like one of them. And everywhere she went, Rick was somewhere nearby, sometimes visible, sometimes in the crowd, always watching. The city began to hum again, cautiously, hopefully. The balcony at dusk. On the third evening, Eloa found Rick leaning on a marble balustrade overlooking the plaza. The suns had just dipped low enough to turn the sky the same violet as her skin. You could have left, she said, stepping up beside him. Could have, he agreed. But you didn't. Rick shrugged. Figured the galaxies got enough ghosts without adding you to the pile. She smiled, tilting her head toward him. Is that the only reason? Maybe I like the view, he said, eyes flicking from the horizon to her. Her fingers brushed his. Stay. It wasn't an order. It wasn't even a plea. Just a simple word offered like a gift. Rick thought about the ring, about the bond between them that still hummed faintly even when they weren't touching. He thought about the sisters, fierce, sharp, funny in their own ways. He thought about the devourer somewhere out there, maybe changing, maybe waiting. He thought about how, for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was running from something. All right, he said, I'll stay. Eloa's smile was slow and warm. Then this is just the beginning. A shadow in the star. Later, when the plaza had gone quiet and the city slept, Rick stood alone on the same balcony. Spark's voice came softly. You know it's not over. Rick looked up at the night sky at a faint shimmer far beyond the atmosphere. Yeah, he said. I know. The shimmer pulsed once, almost like a heartbeat. Rick smiled to himself. Guess we'll be ready. Somewhere far beyond the reach of suns or star charts, in a place that was neither space nor void, the devourer drifted. It remembered the taste of the human. It remembered the spark of defiance in him, messy, illogical, unafraid to burn itself out if it meant someone else could see another sunrise. It had consumed stars before, worlds, civilizations that had lasted 1,000,000 years and fallen without a whisper. But it had never consumed hope, not like his. And now it couldn't. The seed was there, stubborn and bright in the vastness of its being impossible to digest. It pulsed slow and steady like a heartbeat. The human's voice echoed with every beat, you can be more. In the old cycles, this would be the moment it would retreat, lick its wounds, wait until the universe forgot. But the sisters, the ring, the human, they had left it something it did not understand. Curiosity. Far away on a small balcony in a half-rebuilt city, Rick shifted in his sleep. The bond with Eloa flickered faintly, a thread of silver light stretching across impossible distance. And somewhere along that thread, something watched. A gathering storm. In the black between galaxies, ships moved, not fleets, not yet, but scouts. Small, fast, and quiet. Their masters had felt the same ripple through reality that the devourer had. They read it differently, not as a warning, but as an opportunity. They called themselves the Ascendancy. They believed in consuming power, not just wielding it, and now something ancient had stirred something they wanted for themselves. One of their commanders studied a blurred projection of the city on Argon, pausing on the image of a man in dark armor standing beside a violet-skinned woman on a balcony. Find him, the commander said. Bring him in alive, if possible. If not, the pause was deliberate. Bring the ring. The hunger waits. The devourer turned its attention outward. It had been offered a choice. It had taken the first step towards something more than hunger. But the galaxy was already moving again, pieces shifting on a board it had long abandoned. Perhaps the human would survive long enough to meet it again. Perhaps not. Either way, it would be watching and waiting. The last thing it thought before folding itself back into the folds of unreality was not a threat but a promise. Next time I will understand.